Today, we are welcoming Greg Hemming from Hemmings House. Greg is an extraordinary executive producer who creates film, television, and video content for social good. So I'm very excited. This is the man you want to talk about if you really want to talk to, if you really want to create something amazing and create some change in the world. So as we get going, I'd love to do a land acknowledgement. Ethical Digital's main office is based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route for the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge that all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived on and cared for these lands for centuries and whose presence continues to enrich our community. So thank you. And let's also begin. Let's take a look at some of the guidelines for the webinar while we're waiting for some more people to join us. So the very first thing is we're just going to ask that you leave your microphones muted and feel free to leave your camera off. On or off is great, but if you want to ask a question or anything, please do put your camera on. It always feels a little bit warmer and easier for us if we have people nodding and smiling and waving and laughing as we're cracking nonstop jokes. But feel free, whatever your comfort level is. Also, we have a lot of time for questions. We'll be able to answer some questions as we're going, but we're definitely having time for questions at the end. So please throw your questions into the chat box as we go, and we'll try to answer, but we'll certainly take a run at them at the end. But, you know, this is our time to really interact with a very impressive filmmaker and somebody who really knows this space. So this is a good opportunity to have a real conversation. So please do ask those questions as they come up. Also, feel free to turn on transcriptions on the Zoom experience, anything that can make you feel more comfortable. And if you need any technical help or anything like that, we have Vida on the line who can help guide you. And also here at Ethical Digital, we prioritize safe and inclusive environments for these webinars. So we understand that in the digital landscape, it means cybersecurity risks are always a possibility. So as part of our commitment to safeguarding your experience with us here today, in the unlikely event of a Zoom incident, we'll just end the call and then we'll promptly follow up with you all afterwards with an email to figure out what that looks like. But we just want to make sure this is a safe psychological space for everybody involved. So let's get to it. I'm going to start a little bit by telling you about Ethical Digital and our mission. Basically, Ethical Digital, we have the goal of changing the trajectory of the internet. So my background is this is how I met Greg, is I had a technology company where we were using video in the early days. This is before Facebook Live, before a lot of, certainly before TikTok and a lot of different platforms. And we basically created a way to do video that would capture people's authentic stories. So we worked with change makers around the world. We worked with United Nations Women to have men standing up for women's rights in Albania using our video platform. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me. And since then, videos even exploded even further. And it's a really, really powerful, powerful tool because it's really a way to engage people on a different level between their emotional, they can see your authenticity, but you're hitting their emotional components, you're hitting their education and stimulating their brain, entertaining too, right? Even if they're not there just for learning, they also want to be entertained. So there's a lot of really amazing benefits of video. And, we've all heard them, all the statistics about how great video is, but we really want to be thinking about being very strategic about what type of video we're using because we all have limited resources. And so we'll be talking about a little bit about how you decide what kind of things that you want to be doing. So at Ethical Digital, I'm just going to go to the next slide there. Yeah, so we have the overall goal, which is just a nice little small goal to change the trajectory of the internet. And so basically, in a lot of people who are in trying to do social impact, they have a thing called a theory of change, which is if we do these activities, we're hopefully going to see a major change in society. So in our case, we approach this with fact-based research. So we've actually done a lot of research in the areas of how to get more women involved in venture capital, how to get more Indigenous women involved in tech, how social media affects our well-being. So I'll be bringing a lot of those layers into these conversations as well. And then in education, people need to understand it. There's a lot happening in academia, but we need to bring this into the world and have people be able to take some action on it. So we've turned a lot of this information into corporate training. We also are just launching a new certification for communications professionals that it really is about this ethical perspective and this ethical lens in which we look at our work. So what can you be doing to make your work better for people with disabilities, low literacy skills, staying within regulations, making sure that you're using inclusive language, all that kind of good stuff. So we have a swack of resources put together, and we're developing a community of people who really are saying that we are viewing our communications activities through this lens. We'll throw a link to that certification too on in the chat channel as well. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to follow up. We also have a tool we're developing, not quite ready to talk about it, but it's going to be a fun one for communications professionals. But the big part of what we talk about is action. Once you learn these things and you know the good work that you can be doing with your communications, not only making sure that what you're doing is converting, but also making people feel good and helping them get excited about your cause. That's when things get really great. So we're hoping to see a lot of action out of this webinar. And if you do need a hand with any of your digital marketing, social media, websites, email strategies, a really good social media video campaign, we'd love to chat. So moving on, you have a good sense of ethical digital. I want to start off the webinar before we interview Greg to just do a little bit of conversation around digital campaigns that work. And what are some of the things that we can be doing as communications folks, as people who really want to get a big message out there? How can we even approach this type of a process? So we'll just go to the next slide, please, Vida. And I'm just going to touch on some of these pieces that are really important to be thinking about as you're approaching your digital campaign. And this is something we'll frame both what Greg and I talk about. From my perspective, more from the digital media, but Greg from his really excellent video knowledge and experience. But how do you integrate that? Where do you even start when you're thinking about, I need to get my message out there and share that impact? And the very first thing, especially as social impact communicators and people who care about a certain topic deeply, is to always really root what you're doing and start with your why. And, this is something that you always want to do in a lot of communications, but particularly when you're thinking about a big campaign, because video is awesome, but it can be a little bit time consuming and it can be a bit costly. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is really going to make sense for you and that you're doing some thinking about some of the elements that are going to be required to have a successful campaign. So of course, once you step in with your why, the second thing that you want to be doing is defining your target audience. And one of the issues that a lot of us in social impact entrepreneurship have is we're like, this affects everybody. My topic affects everybody. and we've all heard this. We've all fallen into it. This just affects human beings. But the actual part of this is, for this to be effective, is you really need to think about who is the person you're trying to change their mind. Is it the person being affected by your cause? Is it a person who might be funding your cause? Is it something that you do need a certain group? Like, you want politicians to understand the cause a little bit further. So really get clear before you even begin on who it is that you're talking to, because that's going to make a really big difference. And sometimes we get excited about what we're talking about and can't wait to see, I just want to tell everybody about this amazing thing that's going on in our organizations, or this really intense, serious problem that needs to be solved immediately. But you have to start with who cares and who is actually going to be able to do something about this, and really think about who the target audiences are. The third thing you want to do is get clear on your call to action. And this is just a very common thing, for a lot of these different, any campaign. But what do we want people to do? We can tell them, we can change their mindset, which is already a very, very important step. But what's that next step? Do you want them to donate? Do you want them to vote a certain way? Do you want them to really, come to an event? There's all sorts of calls to action. And so getting really clear in terms of what you want people to do with your campaign is also an important step. Next thing, and this is one that Kevin from my team is a real champion at, but branding. Poor Kevin, I actually asked him to brand a few things very last minute for this presentation, but it is a really important piece. You want to make sure that if somebody sees your video, sees your, the content you're putting around it, and that sort of thing, that it really aligns and they can instantly recognize that it is this is the same thing, that they know it's your organization putting it out. They know that your reputation, you've spent some time thinking about that messaging, and they can instantly recognize it. So branding is often something that people kind of think of maybe last. It's sort of the pretty attractive part, but it is a really important piece, to make sure that people just acknowledge that it's from you and you get that recognition. So then they can know, even if they don't take that action immediately in your campaign, it's still on their mind. Maybe a year from now, they're going to be in a different headspace. So, and they can come to you, but they'll remember, because people remember things visually as well. So be thinking about your branding is important too. Another thing to be thinking about too is just style. What kind of video are you going for? Are you thinking about something that's authentic? Like, do you want just Katrina sitting here talking, which is going to be a lot cheaper and faster probably than some of the other options? Or do you want something that's going to be sort of timeless, that's going to be a documentary that people are going to watch for years and years, and it's going to change their minds? And so, each of these are going to have different budget levels, but they're also going to have different inputs, like how much time it's going to take you to be creating that video. Something that, again, like just an authentic video can take, 10 minutes. Katrina sat down, threw in some lighting and started a video. But something that, is going to be a long-term documentary, that can take, you can have a year kind of or longer on some of those things too. So really thinking about what makes sense. Are you looking for something that you can be, timely, you want it out right now and fast? Or is this something that's going to be timeless, where you're going to be investing in it and it's going to have long-term impact? And of course, budget is also going to have a play in that. We're not here to say that, high-end video is cheap or anything, but it can certainly be worth it. And so really thinking about what kind of budget do you have, what, and also in cash, but also in time budget. How many people and manpower hours do you have that can be put towards this to make it a truly effective plan? And then after that, you've started with your video, you've decided what it's going to look like, you decided who you're going to be talking to, you've got it together. This is when you want to be thinking about the where. And so is this something where you have a documentary, and then you have little chunks of that documentary you're putting out to different social media platforms? Are you going to be using this as part of an ad strategy where you're just taking little bits, because a lot of those things require little chunks of video? Or is this something that you are, really going to take, wide? Do you want to do a TikTok, campaign, things like that? So very first, thinking about what you're trying to accomplish and who you're talking to, and then taking it to, okay, what kind of video pieces are we going to need? Do we need a full documentary, but also, about 10 different, cutout pieces of video that we can use for social media? And I know Greg will be able to, add a lot more insights into some of those pieces as well. But really be thinking about it consciously before you even start your campaign. What are we building? Who are we talking to? What does that need to look like? And then how are we going to roll that out? And what assets are we going to need to make that happen effectively? Because while you're doing video, if you're working with a great video group, you might as well just have everything all done once. So it's all branded, looks the same, looks really good, and is a cohesive campaign for you to be sharing. And then, like any good campaign, go for an evaluation. Make sure you're not just, once you've rolled it out, everything's going on, your board of directors is smiling and cheering and clapping, and your bosses are all, giving you high fives and stars. Basically, what are we doing to evaluate that, to actually show those numbers and show that effectiveness of that campaign? And not only that, not only is it good for you to do for internally for, your organization and how how your campaign is performed, but there's also, it's great for your career in the long term. There's a lot of awards you can be applying for that can even give your initial campaign more legs, because you put this campaign out, it's gotten all these eyeballs on it, and then wait, it's going to the Webbies. You submit it to the Webbies, or the Digi Awards in Canada, and all of a sudden you have all these extra eyes on it and people who are looking at it in the long term. And so there's a lot of opportunities and reasons to evaluate, not just to see if it was successful and converted people to your call of action, but also so that you can then report to all the stakeholders on the effectiveness of the campaign. So this is a really high level, run at this. And I want to dive into some of these thoughts a little bit deeper with Greg when we get going. But I did want to show you a quick resource, and basically it's from the Webbies. And can I get you to slip over there, Vida, to the Webbies website? Awesome. And so when you're looking for good examples and something to really inspire you, this is the place that I go to. And what the Webbies are, they're kind of like the Grammys, but for the web. And there are all sorts of marketers and nonstop social impact groups who are making applications and putting them in. Are we able to pull that up? Okay, awesome. So this was just an example that I thought was a good example. I pulled this from the Webbies site, but basically this is a group who really went through the steps that we talked about before. They basically decided who they were talking to. They had exactly where they're sharing this particular campaign to, between Facebook, Instagram. We won't show the video because there's always strange things that happen when you try to show video on Zoom, but we will send you the links so you can check this out as a really great example. These folks won a Webby for their work, but basically they started with a video and some core, you can see they're quite short form videos that 7 minutes, 8 minutes long, and little chunks of them, and started sharing them through different channels. And it's really quite amazing the amount of people that they connected with, the amount of minds that they've changed by using this kind of a format. And so I'm also well, can you go over to the Webbies link itself there, to Vida? Awesome. And I think it's in the chat as well. But this is a really great resource for you to go through and actually go through different campaigns that have won. There's a lot of information in these campaigns that show here's where we started, here's the type of metrics that we reached with this type of people. And it can really help you benchmark and decide, what is your favorite approach? Is it documentary style? Is it going to be more of the authentic video? Yeah, so right there on the window, under the winners on the Webbies, if you go down on the left side, there's a thing there that says video there. And then, yeah, if you want to scan down there, so basically at the top of this, there's just so many for you to look at. But if you keep going down in the general video and keep going down a little bit lower, keep going. Yeah, right there. The video series and channels is kind of my favorite section, because it's not just about the videos themselves. It's also where people have taken out these campaigns and had success. So if you have something that you're looking at, and you can see there's a lot of social impact groups who are doing very well in this space because they really do see the power of that video, that you can actually go through here. You can get a sense of, here's the approach to video that I like. Is it animation? Is it a long form documentary? Is it shorts? And take a look at what their actual results have been, and what their metrics are, how they decided to roll out these onto these different platforms, and how they performed on the different platforms. So we'll send this link to you as well, as a great resource, as a place to find really excellent communication strategies that you can mimic or just be inspired by, in terms of, here's just some really neat ways of approaching this. So this has been a very quick whirlwind to how to approach the digital campaign, but I really would love to get in and talk to the expert on video, Greg. So Greg and I have known each other, as I mentioned, since I had my tech startup in the video space. He runs a B corporation. Ethical Digital is also a B corporation, which means that we're not only taking profit into account, we're really thinking about people and planet at the same time. And we've made a very strong commitment to ensure that our companies are run through that type of a lens. So when I first met Greg, we actually were just talking on the phone, and he said, well, there's a great thing going on in San Diego and in San Francisco. And we ended up groups from both of our teams traveled together to try to conquer the United States with some of our video platforms. And it was a really amazing experience. But I was truly inspired by Greg's just clear vision for social impact and how to actually use video and really interesting approaches to make that happen. So I'll do your formal intro here, Greg, and then I'm going to jump right into some questions. So, so basically, oh, I got to get there here. All right. So Greg is a visionary impact filmmaker and entrepreneur whose career has been defined by his unwavering commitment to creating positive change through the power of impact film storytelling. With a passion for social and environmental issues, Greg has dedicated his life to using the medium of film to shed light on important topics and inspire positive action. His films have helped shape important stories from home to a global audience and share global stories with local audiences with the intention of creating positive change to the medium of film. A global thought leader in the area of positive social impact filmmaking, Greg has produced documentaries with a process that accelerates an intended positive social change, not only through the finished film itself, but through the process of making the film. So thank you, Greg. We're so excited to have you here because you eat, breathe, sleep this entire topic. So welcome. Yeah, can you hear us
Okay,
okay?
I am now unmuted. I just realized that
Excellent.
that reading a bio is different than speaking a bio. So I apologize for all of those words you just had to say.
I feel great about it. No, there's some weight here, and I always love to bring our experts some weight because you've been really doing some incredible things. So let's start at the beginning, Greg, and maybe just talk a little bit about, you and where you're coming from. So, what started you on your journey of social impact storytelling?
Well, I think that goes way, way, way back to when I was a teen, in playing in rock bands, and I don't know what it was. I always just wanted to capture the moment for others. That very simple idea of, if our band was playing a show, I wanted to make sure it was recorded. This is back in the early 1990s, where video cameras sucked, but still, one of the things for me was, okay, not be, and it wasn't about promotion either. It was like, I want to capture this musical moment so other people can enjoy it, or maybe my bandmates in the future could remember it. And that was always a thing for me. And so it really came from the live music world when I was younger, about always wanting to capture moments that other people wouldn't otherwise have a chance to experience. So that evolved, encouraged me to go to film school after I realized there's no such thing as a career rock drummer. That was not an option for me after high school. But I did go to film school and immediately started a business based on filming live music. And we shot a lot of live music festivals, documentaries about bands, about music cultures, all that sort of thing. But the spirit was always there of, okay, this amazing music festival is happening, but there's so many people that aren't here in person witnessing it. I want to share it with others. And it worked. I started making music documentaries and films at the early start of my career that still people reference today, because it was during an era, the beginning of a movement, and I witnessed the power of the medium. Now, this isn't really social impact. It is in a way, but it's just, proving the power of capturing something special and, using this powerful medium of film and music together to create some sort of emotional, response to other audiences who can't enjoy the experience in the moment. Um, a few years after doing music, I also realized again that creating a business, I had employees doing this. We shot thousands of hours of live music concerts and festivals, but I also realized that there's not a lot of money in music either. Not that I'm eager for money, but I had to pay these people. So we
Mhm.
started doing commercial work and marketing work, and started getting into television shows and documentaries for CBC and other things like that. But I used that um, skill set of capturing something special and sharing it with the world, um, for this very interesting music documentary, um, where it was exploring how do we address poverty in our communities through classical music. That was the thesis, and and it was a long answer to your question, Katrina. I apologize, but
Oh, I
it
love it.
is the
Keep going.
source of
I'm in.
all
I'm
of
in.
this.
Yeah.
So the so the whole music, filming music festivals and bands and stuff led into this really neat thing where there was a youth orchestra in New Brunswick, called the New Brunswick Youth Orchestra, and every province has one. It is an elite organization. I say that because it's based on meritocracy. You have to be a very good musician as a young person to get into the orchestra. Makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a good chance if you were brought up in poverty, there's a good chance you didn't have early years music education and didn't get to a point of being great enough to get accepted into the orchestra. The leadership of that orchestra saw that as an issue, and they're like, how do we make this more inclusive? And they saw a program in Venezuela called El Sistema that worked. 750,000 kids every single day after school in Caracas, Venezuela, were learning classical music at a very high level, and not for the reason of learning music, but to create a sense of purpose, create a sense of being a contributing citizen. And this program is life changing to a community that is impoverished, a community that is, you know, I've been to Caracas a few times. It's not really a happy place to live as a child. I'm saying that from my privileged Canadian perspective, but um, I saw how hard it was. Seeing the smiles on these kids as they played music at a very elite level was very cool. So we went down to Venezuela to capture a little bit of footage, let's say 10 minutes of footage, because the orchestra leadership told, pitched the idea for 2 years to different stakeholders in New Brunswick, to funders, to government, saying, it's happening in Venezuela. Could we do something similar? Can we offer music education at a high level every single day after school from grade 1 on up? And everybody's like, well, nice idea for Venezuela, but it would never work here. So that was 2 years of pitching. And when I met the president of the organization, I said, why don't we go to Caracas and bring back a little bit of footage and see how that works, and see if we can change everybody's minds. When I was there, I took two of my film crew with me, and we my mind was blown. Like, I couldn't believe the talent of these kids, and these kids wouldn't have two pennies to rub together. Like we're talking, the barrios of Caracas is some of the poorest areas in South America, and we came back with a sweet little 10-minute piece, and that one little piece of footage, because we got to use the medium of film, we could finally demonstrate to the stakeholders that could make things happen that, look at the look on those kids' faces. Why can't you say it would never work here? Well, why not? Don't you want the same thing? And within a month, about 150 grand was raised to hire the first instructor and get a few instruments. Within 6 months, they raised about $2 million. And today, many years later, say 15 years later, I think it's a $10 million organization, fully funded, sustainable. Thousands of kids are learning classical music at a very high level as a result. And I will say, I don't want to say purely by luck, but we didn't know what we're doing at the time. But if we didn't make that film, this program would not exist. And that program now is across the country. There's other countries around the world that come here to model their Sistema programs off of the New Brunswick program. And it blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, this little medium of film, it didn't have to look good. It just had to tell a good story and share an emotion. It could actually create some sort of social change in our community. And that's when everything changed for me in my mind. And I was like, okay, I think we can do something really cool with this. And that set me off on my company and I onto a trajectory of trying to repeat that process a number of times, and we have, and it's been really neat seeing the impacts. And in your introduction, we're talking about the the impact of the film itself is one thing, but what about the impact of trying to make the film? Well, I would suggest most of the impact happened because of us trying to make the film. Because in the film, we're interviewing people, stakeholders that could support the program. We're bringing them in as potential heroes, different politicians, different business people who could contribute. Like, we show them this bit of footage from Venezuela, and why wouldn't they want to see that to be a success? So you start getting people involved, and a little movement starts, and it's all because of the power of that medium of film. So, long answer to your question: started by wanting to be a drummer in a rock band, and then doing second best, which is filming other drummers being cool in their rock bands, to me realizing that you know what, music has power, but so does film and music, and that was the beginning of me finally realizing that I made a good career choice.
I love that. I
And
love
by the
that.
way, I'm at a conference right now, and my beer is totally empty, but it is
Yes.
holding my phone up right now. There we go.
Excellent, excellent. No, I was going to comment on your backdrop. It's beautiful. Where are
St.
you right
Andrews, New Brunswick,
now?
the
Yeah, okay.
Algonquin Hotel. Though I could pretend you said the Hemmings House. I could say that this is the Hemmings House, but no, this is literally the hotel that Stephen King stayed in when he was inspired to write The Shining. No joke. This is it. This is the
Oh,
place.
that is exciting. Well, really apropos for our conversation today too. I love it. Okay, so you touched on this a little bit, about the power of video, but I know a lot of your work is also revolving around film and television too, and like that type of a medium. So, what are the benefits of being able to reach that many people, like kind of, of film and television instead of just doing like an online video?
Well, I think online videos are incredible ways to
Mhm.
reach many more eyeballs than classic television.
Me too.
It's interesting because I think what the interesting, and I want to study this even more, but like, people still have an assumption that TV is of great influence, right? So if you say I'm coming to do a CBC documentary, people are like, oh, okay, I'd love to be part of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
in reality, I don't know what the stats are, but you might have a magnitude of 10 to 20,000 people that actually see your film on CBC, but it carries so much weight. It's on CBC. Um, right now, anyway, that still is a bit of a power. I think it's waning, but um, you put the same film on YouTube, you could have 10 views, but you could also have 10 million views, depending on how it goes. So, um, I think for me, I'm always trying to figure out where's the best impact for the content, for the story that I'm trying to push forward. Like, there's a few things that I've done that don't make sense for traditional television at all, that completely makes sense to live on YouTube, you know?
Mhm.
And I have not personally experimented yet too much about LinkedIn, but native uploading on LinkedIn, um, not a lot of people are doing it, which means what a great opportunity if your content is relevant to business, like yours is, Katrina, like these webinars, etc. Like, putting your videos up, if they have anything to do with business, why aren't they up on LinkedIn? Because maybe
Ah,
maybe maybe everything could be on YouTube as an archive, but like, figuring out where the audience is. I was talking to somebody yesterday, to a client, about TikTok. We don't work with TikTok, not for any other reason than we just haven't had the opportunity. We're not biased. I'm not a big TikToker, but that's okay. Um,
mm,
there are infinite amounts of audiences on TikTok, depending on what the content is. You know, so yeah, like, and getting a project on Netflix, on Apple TV, on Amazon, on Crave, that comes with a whole different level of expectation, budgets, etc. But right now, I find those streamers are really great avenues to getting content seen. We just sold our first scripted feature film, which is really exciting, to Crave. Actually, we're going to production in January. That's scripted with actors. It's a drama, so that's really exciting. And to have it on a streamer, like, there's so many opportunities for people to see that across the country, instead of it being on CBC, where it might just be seen a couple times in a year. Now, CBC has Gem now too, which works just like a Netflix or anything like that. But anyway, every project is unique, and depending on where your audience is where you need to invest in finding out where it goes.
I love that. And, I think your point about television having credibility is so true. I often found I was doing a lot of CTV Saskatoon segments. And the minute I even just taking that video clip and putting it onto social media, I have no idea how many people were watching it live, but it certainly had a lot of weight and has lended a lot of weight for me professionally as well, just because it had television attached. So I've seen that, over here too. And it's also, one of the things you're talking about is sort of the different levels of video, basically from, you're kind of tossing something up on YouTube and maybe some social media pieces to potentially doing something a bit more intensive, like getting on Netflix, that sort of thing. And when a lot of people think about television, can you just kind of break that out for people, like what your sort of different levels are, and then what they would need to do to get there? Like a lot of people are not going to become television producers. They're busy running their organization or their, that kind of thing. So obviously they reach out to a group like you, but just sort of high level, what
Hmm.
would that look like for people to get involved in the different levels of television or film or video?
Well, I just think the area, sorry, the um, cost of entry is very low. We all have TV studios in our pockets these days with our smartphones, and I've got the iPhone 14, I think, and the imaging on it's fantastic. It's amazing. Um, it's not a cheap phone, but it is a cheap video camera, and it punches above its weight. Like there's no excuse for any of us not to be filming cool stuff. Um, so I'm always about don't be so hung up on on the cinematic art and the quality of your videos, especially for running businesses. It's about telling authentic stories and being authentic on camera, letting your customers or audiences or stakeholders know that um, you care about the topic that you're talking about. You know, you can write that in a blog, but nobody can hear your inflection or your tone or your passion. Video is awesome. Now you can hear it in a podcast too. You can hear passion and stuff, but until you see the face and the smile and the eyes and all this, it's such an amazing tool to get people to know you first before engaging with you, in some sort of a business deal, if you will. So I've done a million videos just with my iPhone, just walking through the woods, talking into it. Just doing the whole selfie type of video blog style, and it's a great way to get people to hear your message and watch it. It keeps them engaged. And I suppose it'd be kind of cool to turn it around a little bit and figure out, you know, a few of the people that we're talking to here on the call. Are we all entrepreneurs here? Would you say, with thumbs up, or artists, or yeah?
Yeah, please,
So
please
one way
add
or
in
the
the
other,
chat. Yeah.
would I assume that everybody is trying to connect with an audience of some sort? Yeah. So I feel that's one. I'm going to defend. I'm going to say it. Video is the best way, outside of meeting people in person, to share your ideas through your own perspective, as your whole self. And seeing those facial cues and body language and things like this. And like, I wouldn't stress out about going to make these great videos with big edits. Like, if you've got an idea, use video to get it across and get it out there. And the cool thing about doing that is you can extrapolate the audio, turn into a podcast. You can then transcribe the podcast audio, turn it into a blog. There's so much that can come out of doing video. And one of the things, that we've done a few times is we made a documentary called Code Kids, where, similar to Systema, we went to Estonia and found that Estonia was the best place in the world, best demonstration of bringing coding and technology into early age education, grade 1 on up, where boys and girls equally were learning and enjoying and loving tech, like robotics and coding and all this. And we don't enjoy that in North America, because most kids that get introduced to computer sciences, it's in high school, and by that time you've lost the girls for the most part. Statistics show. But in Estonia, boys and girls are learning it right at the beginning. So our documentary was that, and that also that film itself also resulted in an organization called Brilliant Labs that has now helped thousands of kids and students get into tech in all school grades, creating maker spaces out of libraries. It's been really neat seeing it as a direct impact of the film itself. But the film itself was a CBC doc, and it wasn't a cinematic piece of brilliant art, but it showed how other people are doing things right, and painted a dream about how we might be able to do the same thing here at home. And with that, we did hundreds of interviews on video, and 90% of those interviews never got into the film, but they all had great content to say. So we released all of them on YouTube, all of the interviews, and created blogs out of them. Like there's so much you can do with the content, with the raw content that doesn't end up on your really cool little artistic distribution piece. So just thinking about that, not being scared to release something that you think people are going to judge you because it doesn't look right. Like, who cares? Nobody cares. We can spend $150,000, $200,000 on a little documentary, and it looks good. Or somebody could go out and look. Yeah, the expensive one looks good, but maybe we get a couple thousand eyeballs on it, and somebody else goes out and does something on their iPhone, they get a few million. Like, it's not necessary to stress out about, or don't use it as an excuse not to do it. So yeah, I'd love to hear from. I know it's probably not question time, but like there's probably people here that have questions in specifics about their businesses or their initiatives or art. Because I can talk in a million different directions. I'm really good at that, but sometimes I'm blabbing. So
Yeah, so please, if you want to ask live, we'd love that. Or if you want to put it in the chat, that's great. So, okay, we have our first question. What are your thoughts on using music in short videos like reels that are protected by copyright? So Instagram gives you the option on adding and tagging audio, but I found that I get prompts that the audio is muted in some countries because it's protected by copyright. Do you know other content creators are working around this, or should we exclusively use royalty-free audio? I see videos using popular songs all the time. How would you approach that in this day and age?
Well, again, it depends on where your audience is, because let's say your audience was Canada, the US, and let's say that's a country that's not blocking it, and you want to use a Rihanna song or something on it, and if you can get away with it, go for it. I know a lot of artists actually really appreciate their music being used on TikTok because it's a way to blow them up, especially indie artists. We've worked with so many musicians over the years that I find literally just sending an email or picking up the phone and talking to the artists. It's a really cool way just to make new friends. And you'd be surprised at how many people say yes. And my preference is always to use royalty-free music. But I also pay a license for a library. So music libraries aren't that expensive. And you can find some really killer tunes with lyrics in these banks. And you don't have to worry about it. You've got the rights for the world. You put it out. Your content will not be blocked. So if the purpose is to get your content out without getting blocked, pay your license and get it out. If you want to take a risk and do something kind of fun, honor that musician somehow. I don't like, especially in TikTok, that's the culture. It's like find a song, slam it in a lot of cases, I think it does good for the artists. I don't really know the back end of how TikTok works in that way, but yeah, another thing is like, I like to use indie artists a lot too. And a lot of people just love getting their music out as long as it can be tagged or linked, that sort of thing. Does that relate to what your experience is so far? Yeah. That's cool. What is it that you're doing with videos, Kevin?
Oh, just like any of the videos that we create, or even for the clients, because I work with Katrina here, like they've requested specific songs, for example, like if they're country artists that they want to use to promote their farming equipment. I know for me, like I've always with school but was taught to use royalty free to avoid any of the legal issues. But yeah, again, like jumping into TikTok and seeing everyone making like product promotion videos using like Drake or Rihanna songs, it's just very confusing for me. So I don't know where.
Yeah, well, that's completely it is illegal. Let's just put it this way: to to sell product and to use a Drake song. Drake's management and public publications, they just don't care. Obviously, they're not going after it, but the right thing to do is find who's got the publishing rights to that song. And it's not hard to find that out. Usually, like, you go into iTunes, you see the publisher.
Mhm.
And like, let's say you want a Wilco song, like you could call Jeff Tweedy and ask him for permission, or find out who actually has the publishing rights to that song, and it might
Okay.
be his record label that he might be an owner of, which is cool. But at that point, they might say, "Yeah, hook us up for $200." Interesting example. We run an outdoor film festival here, and this one first-time filmmaker was making a cool little film about sailing, and the name of their sailboat was called Divided Sky, which is a song by the band Fish. And they were like, I would really love to use it. And I was like, yeah, but in film festivals, you have to have permission for everything that you use. And I just happened to be working on a film with the drummer from that band. So I already knew their management. And then I said, just call their management and tell them what you're trying to do. And the Fish management gave them the rights to it just for film festivals. They couldn't put it online after, but it was for free. It was nothing. They're like, yeah, go for it. If it's going to help your film, that's awesome. But how cool is that? Like it just kind of worked. And then if it was like, can I publish it on YouTube? They might say, yeah, hook us up for $1,500 or who knows what. But you'd be surprised how easy it actually is to get permission or to get relatively low rates depending on what you're asking. And again, you get to be cool people in the process.
Cool.
I
Awesome.
love
Thank you.
that. Thanks so much, Greg. We actually have a couple more questions on our way. So we have a hand up, but we also had somebody put something in the chat here. So we'll hit the chat one first, and then we'll get the person with their hand up if he or she feels comfortable actually unmuting to ask the question. That'd be awesome. But we'll ask the first one first. Greg, what are your thoughts on using digital storytelling to change policies for marginalized groups? And how can I do this without overpowering their stories with my artistic inspiration?
Oh, I love it. Well, film is the best tool, I will biasly say, to do exactly that. Because at the end of the day, underrepresented communities and voices that typically are not heard, the best way to change culture is to allow people to get to know each other. That's it. And it's like, how do we know each other if we don't have the opportunity to sit and have dinner with people, like get to know them personally? Well, video is the next best thing, in my opinion. So obviously, getting marginalized communities' stories out there in a way, my approach is, I'm definitely a left-leaning storyteller politically, but I don't throw rocks in my stories. I choose not to be a rock thrower. I'm more about let's get everybody together around the fire and chat and get to know each other. We may have our differences, but we probably care about the same thing in the middle. Once people start to see that, oh my gosh, the others aren't as other as I thought, some amazing things happen. So I encourage you heavily to use video for this. The artistic side, that's a really good philosophical question. My opinion is if your artistic lens is going to help the viewer experience be enhanced, right? Because let's say it was a really cool story but shot really poorly. You might get 3 or 4 minutes of someone's attention and they're like, okay, neat, and they move on. But if it's shot beautifully or has a great soundtrack, those are kind of the hooks that you're trying to pull them along to get right to the end of the important story. So I'd say, like, use as much of your artistic expression as you can. But it's a very good self-aware question, because it's not about you, it's about the story. So is your artistic expression enhancing the amplification of that story or detracting? And I think you'll know that if you ask a few of your closest friends who promise to be honest with you when they watch it. If that's helpful, I hope.
Yeah, I love that so much. Carla, are you willing to unmute and ask your question?
I'll lower my hand. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Saskatoon. Hi, Katrina. Hello. Thank you for creating this. I'm a legacy guide and a celebrant in Saskatoon. And my work is really centered around story. So I lead workshops for people starting to write their memoirs. I design ceremonies that are like weddings, funerals, baby blessings that are really go deep into the story of people. I also run workshops where people use their mortality as a lens through which to live fully.
Nice.
There's a lot of really deep and meaningful sharing and transformation that's happening. And I think that when people know the experience that can happen, they will want more of it. But I also am very careful to not, like I don't take pictures at funerals, for instance, or if I'm creating a really safe and confidential online space or in-person workshop, I don't want to be there like taking videos and photos. So my challenge is a little bit like, how do I create messaging that's engaging and impactful and share some of that without, making people uncomfortable or taking away from that safe, confidential space.
Mhm.
And one of the ways I would love to do it is like through video testimonials, where I get people either sharing about their experience, or it's like a Zoom conversation where I with them after the fact and I take snippets of it. Very low budget because I don't have a high budget, but like I would just look maybe to Katrina, since you're doing digital marketing stuff, for advice on like how to create something that feels authentic,
Mhm.
and powerful, and but also somewhat quality. Yeah, using either myself to edit or maybe somebody online that
Well,
could do some editing with
I,
stuff.
I, I think you already know what to do because you just said it. Testimonials are awesome, authentic testimonials, and eventually you'll probably get to a point where you will have certain clients that would actually love to have their loved one's ceremony filmed, as an example, for legacy purposes, or for to share with other family members that could come. I'm using that as an example. And that's an upsell for you that you can work with Katrina on. I know it sounds very transactional, but it is. Like you have a very special role in a grieving family's life, and legacy is huge. It's a checkbox. Hey, do you want any of the ceremony to be captured through stills for photography, just through audio, through microphones, or through video, or all of it? We've got partners that do that. So that could be a side thing that you find your partners for, and you have some sort of arrangement with them. It's a nice little upsell of sorts. And then, so that would be in the future when you get enough of that with their permission down the road. You go back and say, hey, listen, I'm putting together a little sales video to demonstrate what we do. Can we use a little bit of the B-roll from your loved one ceremony? We'll give you permission. Yeah, we'll give you editorial rights to show it to you. Won't release it without your permission. Blah blah blah. That's all good. But in the meantime, I think if you take what type of phone do you have? It doesn't matter. But what
iPhone 10,
camera phone do you have?
it's a 13 maybe iPhone.
Great. I mean, it's perfect. I was thinking if it was 14, maybe 13 has, but 14's got the depth of field feature in it, which is really nice. It kind of or it's kind of like Kevin right now, like with the background blurred. That phone does it really well.
Mhm.
But if you just came up with your phone and pretend I'm the customer, and you brought it this far away, right? And you just ask questions behind the camera. So you're behind the camera, you're holding it, and you just say, hey, tell me about the experience that happened 2 weeks ago at your loved one's ceremony. And they look right into the camera, like, yeah, it was, the whole family was here. It was great that Carla was here to help me go through this experience, and blah, blah, blah. I don't mean blah, blah, blah. That seems heartless, but you know what I mean? And just make these little 2-minute testimonials. And everybody has their own story, and everybody's got their own way of expressing it. And if they loved working with you and they understand your value, that you could help other people the way you help them, then there's a good chance they're going to say yes. And I would agree. You wait for a number of weeks after and go back, but I think you totally do it yourself. Super easy. Excuse me. Minimal editing, if any, maybe some tops and tails, and you pop it up, and put it on wherever you find your clients. Maybe it's on your website, maybe it's on an email newsletter, or maybe it's on your LinkedIn. I'm not too sure, but it's you could have a theme as well, right? Like with every testimonial, you're asking us a particular question about, something, the philosophy of the celebration of life. What does it mean to celebrate life at the end of someone's life? Maybe that's one common question that happens every single time. And people are like, oh, I wonder what this person's going to say, answer to that question. Or you're finding some through line that encourages other people to kind of come back and watch the rest of them. Just some ideas, but yeah, I think you're on the right track, starting with testimonials.
And I'll add in there, and I'm so sorry if you can hear a weird buzzing. Someone decided to vacuum right now, even though my whole home knows that we're on this webinar. Anyway, right above my head. It's awesome. But we do have also just a little bit of time for one extra question after this too, if someone wants to slide something in. But in the meantime, I also think too, like you're very right about laying into that intuitiveness of, is this the right time or the right person to ask? And there's going to be those people who want to share, they're even as part of their grieving process, as part of their, if they've gone through a workshop, that sort of thing, they're sort of in a point of inspiration. And so I wouldn't feel bad about asking, certain personalities and people who are really hitting a place of, excitement about what you're doing. If you kind of have to gauge the person a little bit, and coming in soft too, right? To be like, hey, no problem if you don't want to do it, but it would be wonderful if I could capture this in this moment. Or to Greg's point a little bit later. But I often, sometimes, because again, you're dealing with very sensitive subjects, I would probably, think about it from your perspective of like, is this the right time? Is this the right, is a Google review better from this person in 2 months because they're still mourning, things like that. So I think you're being very sensitive and that's shining through. I also absolutely love your service. I didn't realize you were doing that. So we may have to talk afterwards because I love that type of work. But in the meantime, like I often think too, like when I was doing a lot of video production, one of the things I was learning was, there's something very interesting about just the overall experience of an interview. So you have people who are actually looking at they're getting deep, they're telling their stories in a really deep way. And so that's actually a really important thing to be thinking about, is that you're talking, you're just sort of silent on your side, but they're getting this opportunity to share. And I often found that people got very vulnerable very quickly in that interview process. I don't know if you find this too, Greg, where, you kind of have the first couple of questions and people are like, here's my name, here's how you spell it, all that kind of stuff. And then because you weren't talking, you weren't waiting for your chance to talk back, you're kind of just listening. And so it really gives people a really great opportunity to just start to spill a little bit. And I actually found that a lot of people shared things with me when I was behind the camera, a lot deeper type things than they would, like someone said, I'd never shared this with my family before, things like that, because it was just sort of the medium of doing those interviews that really brings out some of that richness of the human experience. So again, there's a massive opportunity there because, people are right there listening, but there's also some vulnerability that you do want to be conscious of. And I think you're doing absolutely the right thing by even thinking about it. And, if you're doing a documentary, people know why you're there, but, if they're talking about their end of life, kind of plans, they might be on a high, like, here's what I'm going to do before I get there. But, maybe feel uncomfortable with sharing that a bit more widely. So I think just being conscious about the type of person who you're interviewing and their comfort level will be your trick.
Thank you both.
Oh. All right. Well, I managed to just fill up that last bit, but I don't think we had another question come up anyway. So yes, we'd love to have you join in our ethical digital certification. If you have any digital marketing needs we can help you out with, we'd love to do that too. Greg, how can people get a hold of you if they're thinking that they want to do a very intensive video project?
Yeah, my email, Greg, Greg, at hemmingshouse.com, HEMMINGS, house.com. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and all those other places. You won't find me on TikTok, but maybe if my girls convince me harder, I will end up getting an account. But
I'm with you on the
I'm easy
TikTok
to
thing.
find.
I'm with you on the TikTok thing.
Listen, I know I'll love it. I
Yeah.
don't have enough bandwidth. It's just I've got too many of these things already. as I talk to the digital marketer here.
Yeah. But thank you, everybody. We are going to send out a recording of this to everybody who participated, and we will have this available on our YouTube channel as well. But we'll also send out Greg's contact information so that you can see this. And we're also going to send out that Webby's link too, because it's a really great starting point for when you're thinking about, I want to do a major campaign. Here's some really great inspiration right in there. So we'll send that out to everybody too. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for taking time
Thank you, everybody.
out of your session. Thank you.
All right. See you guys.
Goodbye.
All right.